and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
This is Brent Bean, a Republican for governor. Wyoming families know what matters: law enforcement, emergency services, and supporting strong schools, agriculture, and energy production. But state government keeps growing while priorities fight for resources. That has to change. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending and priority problem. Vote for me on August 18th, and I'll put Wyoming priorities first. I'll return taxes to you, the taxpayer, and make Wyoming number one. Paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings.
All right, my friends. Now we've got it figured out. Maybe we won't start the episode.
Some of this digital stuff, you know, it.
Well, I think what happened is, and I don't know if you had the power go out at your house, Ken, but there was a pretty good lightning storm yesterday, and it flashed a couple times at my house. So maybe, but anyway, you know, digital stuff, and you know what? I've got a story about this. Let me just pick it up.
Maybe it was AI.
Well, it could be. But have you noticed that everything is going digital? How could you not, right? You download all of our music now. Yeah, I mean, you can still buy albums. There's a store downtown that has a pretty good selection of different albums. But you don't buy compact discs anymore, or at least anybody living in this decade doesn't. And there are video game producers that aren't producing physical copies of their video games anymore. One of those is Sony. They're not producing any sort of PlayStation discs anymore. And maybe this is me in my tinfoil hat, but I took seriously when all the socialists said, "You will own nothing and be happy." You see, when you buy a video online, like it's on Amazon or whatever, you don't actually own it. You renting it, but Amazon or whichever Hulu or Netflix or whichever service you're using, they could delete that video at any time, which means you don't actually own it. Now, with all the equipment in the studio, just about everything in here is all digital. A little bit different, but what happens sometimes is when the power goes out, it resets all the settings on everything. Ken and I were doing an event in Casper at the hangar, and I mean, it was a big event. We had, God, how many microphones did we have, Ken? 8, 10?
Something like that. We had a forum there of probably 8 legislators at the time.
Yeah, I know it, and that room is hard to do sound in anyway because it's so cavernous and everything echoes. Well, Ken and I spent about an hour and a half getting everything tuned right, and we thought, hey, this is going to be great. We'll take the digital board, and that way Ken could run everything from his iPad, and balance everything. And that way, if you had somebody that maybe they were eating the mic or they talked louder, well, Ken could just kind of adjust it on the fly. So we're all ready to go about 30 minutes before the event kicks off, and somebody walks through the back door.
It's more like 5 minutes personally, but that just might be the way I remember
it. It felt like 5 minutes. So somebody walks through the back door and trips over the power cord and unplugs everything. And
power cord was taped to the floor and everything. Why somebody was even over there, I
don't know. But anyway, it reset everything, and so the equipment we were using was all digital. And so we had to reset everything in about 30 minutes. And it became a very, very stressful day for Ken. Big time. I knew when things like that happen, I mean, I've known Ken and I've worked together long enough that I know just to back off because he's not going to be very happy.
Especially get out of my pistol range.
Yeah. You don't want to be anywhere close to that. So
my pistol range is not very far.
Well, so digital stuff, it's all kind of temporary, right? Nothing is ever set in stone, and it's never permanent. So I want to show you one thing that I don't believe I've shown you on the open range record. So if you just pick any article, and let's go to this one real quick. So this article here, you should go read it. This is another Wyoming Business Council snafu. FUBAR, snafu, whichever acronym you want to use. But essentially, you and I, and all of us in this room, paid $4.5 million to the town of Alpine for this brewery that you see there in the picture. And then they used that land to get another grant to build out some wastewater treatment. And then part of the deal was they had to hire 30 people, and there's no proof that they ever did that. And now the whole thing is for sale for $10 million. So you and I paid a grant for the town of Alpine to build up their economy, and now the whole thing is going to be sold for $10 million. So great article. Go read it. It's pretty big, but I mean, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to show you is if you go all the way down to the bottom of the article, there's a really cool button here that I don't know if anybody's ever noticed. See, one of my big complaints with any sort of online news outlet, the Cowboy, Wild Pile, Turkey Vulture, anything, when they make an error, they just go in the middle of the night and they just correct it. And so you go look at the article again and whoops, no more mistake anymore. And so it's like it never happened. So one thing, and I don't know if anybody's ever seen this before, but on the open range record, I put an option in there to where you can create a PDF right from the article. So if there's an article that you want to, let me just see if I can move this over here so you can see it. There we go. So from the page, you can print a PDF, and it's exactly what you see on the screen right there. And that way you've actually got a copy of the article. And I mean, I would never go in and edit it anyway. I might go in and fix a grammatical error. But if we have to change something, I don't change it. I put a note at the top of it. So, so this is another example of where, digital stuff, man, I mean, maybe the socialists are winning on this one. You'll own nothing and be happy about it. I don't know.
Until they start trying to make all the guns digital,
Yeah, this is true.
I'm going to be okay. Most of that stuff I don't want to maintain or be responsible for.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So I'd like to welcome to the program a good friend of the program. He's actually co-hosted it on occasion. Representative Tom Kelly. Morning, Tom.
Good morning. Good to be here. Let me
Yeah.
guess. Is the sound quality good? Agent 29, you got me?
I got you. I got this. I'm used to doing you.
Fair enough. All right. So Tom is running for the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. So how's your race going, Tom?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I can't read these things. Everybody knows how I'm socially wired. I can't read how voters react to me. I do know at campaign stops
Okay.
that things go very well. I do know that supporters are very, very enthusiastic. But that doesn't really tell you anything. I mean, Walter Mondale's supporters were very enthusiastic.
This is
and
true.
We saw how things turned out. So it hasn't been a disaster as far as I can tell.
Okay. Fair enough. Of course, you had a debate earlier this week.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? We talked like before the debate, a little bit after.
I'm always my worst critic. No matter what I say or do, I come away from it thinking
I
about,
don't
I
know.
said something wrong, I did something wrong, I said this. I kept tripping up on the word relevancy for some reason.
Relevancy.
Yeah, it just flows off the tongue now, but I got a mental block. The social anxiety hits. So once I strip away me and look at it as objectively as I can, I thought I heard a lot of non-consequential responses.
There was a lot of that going on.
That a question to be asked about this duty of the superintendent, that'd be this cheerleading, rambling speech about how wonderful our public schools are.
Yes.
Which I didn't interject. I would return the questions back to it. I'm like, well, since we're talking about the duties of the superintendent, and I'd go back to the question. And I know some people are like, well, you should have hammered back on this. I'm like, but it was off topic. That's not
Right.
what they were asking. I did finally address it at the very end, just saying, we need a superintendent that recognizes the greatness of our public schools and the room for improvement, not just rah, 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 sis, boom, bah, we're the best in the world. There's nothing to change. And I think that's why I've got supporters who are not quite as conservative as I am.
Yeah.
I've had people pull me aside and say, listen, I don't agree with you on everything. Sometimes you're a little too far right for me. But at least you understand that there's room for improvement. I'm too concerned your opponents are a little too complacent with how good things are.
Well, that came through loud and clear. I mean, there were a couple of questions. And, it's weird being the moderator because, the only thing you get to do is ask the question. And so I listen to the responses, and what goes through my head is, how would I answered it this way? Oh, man, really? I'm kind of surprised they're going this direction. I thought this question would go in a totally different direction. But one of the points I thought you made pretty clearly, and maybe it was towards the end of the debate, was that, okay, so our scores are improving. Our scores say that we're actually pretty good. But when you look, and you brought up the NAEP scores, but when you look at the whole, none of us are doing that great. And so while maybe we improved a point or two, that's not really that great of a job.
I'm so glad you brought this up because it's always brought up. We're always one of the best. We're always in the top 5. Sometimes we're the best. And then I was the one who pointed out, but those same scores showed that 2 out of 3 of our students are not proficient in what they need to be proficient in. Room for improvement. But there's the other side of it too, as I've heard it before, sometimes described the cream of the crop. Yeah.
Who would say a thing like that?
Not Ken. Never.
Yeah, don't get in a wad. Yeah. He would never say something off color. But when I hear that, I understand the sentiment of it, that in general, the United States is not doing as great as we would like, even though we're at the top of the United States. But see, from the other side of it, I'm a former public school teacher, and I still have relationships with school teachers and people who work in education, being on the education committee and the recalibration committee. That's demoralizing to public teachers who are really working hard in the classroom. They're doing the best they can with the resources they have, the kids they're given, with whatever the baggage the kids are bringing in today, whatever cell phones they're bringing in today, whatever social media addictions they have, whatever's going on in their family, and whatever standards and regulations the state and the feds are making them, the boxes they have to check off every day to make sure that they're being distracted by things that have really nothing to do with how well the kids are doing in the classroom. But are you meeting this goal of excellence? Did you check off this box on this spreadsheet? So just to sum that up, you got teachers really busting their butt. And when they're dismissed as the cream of the crop, well, it's no wonder we have this nationwide shortage of teachers. Fewer and fewer people want to go into it, and that's for a multitude of reasons. That's one, because the whole industry is sometimes, kind of crapped on.
So, point is very well taken.
And the other one is because, and I admit this too, public education has begun to lean so far left that conservatives don't want to go into it.
My problem is the system itself. The system itself is corrupt. It's rigged against success. You're, like I mentioned yesterday, I think it was, you're trying to teach 30 kids a process, and you got 30 kids that learn 27 different ways, because 3 of them ain't going to learn at all.
Right.
But it is a system rigged to fail, and it's the system's problem. And so you're going in there trying to get wine out of a water well, and there's only one person I know that was able to do that. And so I take your comments about the cream of the crop to heart, but I also, for my own part, I spend a lot of time saying we have very good professional teachers. They know what they're doing. They do their job well. They don't need 7 layers of bureaucracy on top of them.
Well, an interesting point, I think, perhaps comparison. So I'm right in the middle of setting up, helping with all these debates. Okay, you were in one the other night, which, by the way, I thought, including the hailstorm, I thought the debate went very well. My own personal thoughts about it. But anyway.
Yeah, poor Chad. Just as he starts talking, the wrath of God hits.
Oh, man. And you couldn't hear anything in there. But I'm right in the middle of setting up all these debates. And you got a number of different people, various and desperate personalities, way different political views. And getting everybody on the same page, no offense intended, guys, not you two, but a lot of them, it's been like dealing with a bunch of children. And I mean, just the complaints, I don't want to do it that way. Oh, I think we should do it this way. And if that is what it's like dealing with a bunch of adults, where you can't get any of them on the same page and everybody wants to do it their own way, if that's what dealing with adults is like, I can only imagine what it's like dealing with those people's children. And I know I'm kind of painting with a big, wide, broad brush, but think about it. You brought it up. Kids come in with a cell phone. They've probably got any number of devices on them. They've got one of these watches. You ask them to write a paper. They're using AI. I mean, I think being a teacher is a very difficult job. I think that the folks that are good teachers, I think, are pretty rare. Because it is so difficult. But I do think that the teachers we have work their butt off most of the time without the resources that they need to actually do the job. And then when they say, hey, I need this piece of equipment for my classroom, they're probably met with the response of, oh, well, that's not in the budget, while they see the football team with, a brand new set of football pads. And so, you guys in the legislature kind of dealt with that a little bit, and I want to talk about it since I have the two of you here. So recalibration. What we see in the media is, you're cutting athletics. Now we don't have enough money for athletics. Well, from my point of view, if the only thing we've done is silo money meant for the classroom, that is, you can't use it on other things, it has to be spent in the classroom, and you don't have enough money for athletics, doesn't that mean that we were stealing the teachers' money?
Well, exactly. That is what was happening. And when we came with the educational silo, and there's a lot of grinding of teeth, gnashing of teeth, because we've taken away local control. Well, I'm somebody personally who's huge on local control in school. When we're talking about curriculum development, when we're talking about instruction, how they're going to teach the kids. That's up to the localities. Their curriculum should be chosen primarily by the localities with just a basket of goods that's very slimmed down from the state. The state should be like reading, writing, math. These are the basics, and then whatever your community needs from there. That being said, when the state allocates money to fix roads, the roads should be fixed.
Yes.
When the state allocates money to fix infrastructure and water, that's where that should go. And when we allocate money to make sure we can recruit and retain excellent educators, that's where the money should go. And we attempted to do that in 2025. And this is something I could have brought up at the debate, but it was off topic. We allocated $52 million for teacher salaries specifically, and most of it didn't go to that. Some districts did a good job. Some split it up between giving increases and between compensation for healthcare benefits, because those keep going up because the Affordable Care Act. And other districts decided to spread that money out as we looked into it, not just among the teachers, but they gave everybody in the district a raise, which ended up, which I think is okay too. But there were some districts that money just kind of evaporated and we don't know exactly where it went. Thus came the silo and said, we need to do significant raises, which are happening now. They're happening now. And some districts claim they would have done it anyway. And I don't believe it, because they've already said about activities that we don't have the money for activities. And we could have made things work if you hadn't taken away the flexibility. Translation, we could have rated the teachers' pay to pay for our activities.
You know, one question I asked you guys that I was hoping would spark a broader discussion, but it was one of those, as you described it, that kind of got off topic. But the question was, should we create a silo for athletics? And
activities,
activities is, I think, what I said. And what I was hoping is the discussion would be, look, we should be spending our money on the things that are they're education related, right? We shouldn't have to spend a crap load of money on all of these activities when, you know, a bunch of our kids can't read. You know, we really should be focusing on education. And I think that you handled that well. I mean, you said, no, I don't think we need any more silos. No, I mean, the whole discussion was fascinating to me. Now, one question I do want to press you on.
All right.
I was kind of interested in the response. Is the topic was that that teachers should be evaluated on performance.
Merit pay.
Basically,
okay. Go
merit
ahead.
pay, performance
Drill
metrics.
deeper. Do your investigative journalist thing here versus the objective moderator you were.
All right. So here's my question. Every other industry, every other job in this world can evaluate employees based on how they perform in one way or another, depending on the occupation. Why is it that you can't do it with teachers?
Because, as I said at the debate, this is not a market-based system. 90+% of the teachers, they're public employees. And here's the issue. When you have government employees getting paid based on merit, based on the performance of their job, quite often we find that their performance is rated on how well they get along with their manager, who their friends are at the top. And we won't necessarily get people getting paid their market value. We'll be getting paid about how much they cozy up to administration sometimes. Now, some people in administration might be like, well, that's insulting to me. I would never do that. I believe that. I believe we got some good, objective people in administration. However, again, the market incentive is not there to pay for the best teachers. If you have an excellent teacher who's incredibly annoying pain in the butt, I think I could speak from experience to administrators as somebody who refused to even join the teachers union. I was definitely a maverick when I was teaching.
You? No, never.
I did great. I got a job as a special ed teacher, even with no special ed certification. They gave me the most difficult kids because I was so good at reaching kids. I was so good at working with parents. However, I was a thorn in the side to the administration. I doubt I would have gotten a good pay raise. It would have been like, we need to keep this guy here. It'd be like, we'd be better off without him. He speaks up about things, and he steps out of his lane and criticizes the administration. And so the short answer to pull it all together, because I know you've got a time limitation here.
We got more time than you think.
It's just that ultimately what you'll have going on is that teachers who are not the best will be getting paid more than teachers who are, because there is no profit motive in there. Though the other thing that I have an issue with is that merit-based pay tends to be then on test scores. And I said this at the debate too. Test scores are heavily influenced by how well off a community is. Sheridan's test scores do well for two reasons. One, we have good teachers. Two, this is an affluent part of the state. And since it's an affluent part of the state, the data is overwhelming. The analysis say it over and over. When you have rich, stable families, the kids do better in school than when you have broken homes, poor families, single parenthood. And when you teach in a district that has single parents, has kids that have sociological problems, that's a hard job. It's harder than teaching the well-adjusted, well-supported kids. Those teachers would end up getting paid less for doing a harder job under that system. So that's like something where Tate Mullen, I, and the WEA actually see eye to eye on something. Now, we have different solutions for teacher pay, but we both agree that if we were to try to go to a merit-based system, there would be too many perverse incentives in a government monopoly.
All right, let's get a question in from one of our viewers.
Wow.
Patrick wants to know, would you take your car to a repair shop that is successful only 60% of the time at fixing cars?
No.
Then
No.
why would we do it with teachers?
Why would we do that with teachers?
Mhm.
Well, again, you've got the government monopoly structure. And this is where we get into more of a legislative question than a superintendent, because the superintendent, my job will be to effectively and efficiently implement the laws of the legislature.
Right.
But as a legislator, this is why I was somebody who pushed for school choice, because competition is what allows parents, when they look at a district like that and they say, whatever the reason, the teachers are great, they're really nice, but this is not a good fit for my child. But I have to work, I can't homeschool, I'm not rich, I can't go to a private school. This is where ESAs fill in that gap for families that have kids falling through the cracks.
Okay. All right. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and take our break, Ken. And when we come back, I've got a follow-up question for that. We're with Tom Kelly, who is running for the Superintendent of Public Instruction, one of the 5 statewide elected officials in Wyoming. So let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue with him. Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. schools listen to this program. Good morning, Sherman. Thanks for watching the program. We're visiting with Tom Kelly, who's running for the Superintendent of Public Instruction. And before the break, we were talking about teacher pay. And I think frankly, I think employee pay is just a big topic generally. Doesn't really matter what industry you're talking about. If you can't hire good people, well, then you're not going to have a good business. So Tom, I think that you made the argument pretty clearly that it's very difficult to pay or evaluate a teacher based on any sort of outcome metrics. I mean, and I think that's been a debate in this country for a really long time. So the question then is, okay, if outcomes are not the thing to evaluate teachers on, what is? Because I certainly want to reward the teacher who is skilled in the classroom, has students that always do well. He's great with the kids. I want to reward that guy because he's a good teacher or gal. So then, if outcomes are not the thing that we measure teachers on, what is?
One thing that we could do, and when you're talking about teacher pay, I'm thinking from the statewide level.
Sure.
When you give districts more flexibility to add things such as financial incentives for certain things,
okay,
sometimes even doing activities, that can be helpful. But this is where it's very difficult to discern about how to pay people in a government system. And this is why most government systems tend to have unions, collective bargaining, and they try and come up with something within the system. I would not want the state dictating a one-size-fits-all pay schedule for the entire state, which is, it's unrealistic. Even with regional cost adjustments, it's just unrealistic. There would be some things that I've seen in districts that work. Sometimes longevity is a good one because people who stay in the game tend to have more experience and they tend to have the tolerance to do that. I've experienced it myself, seeing teachers who are burnt out just waiting for retirement, but that is few and far between, actually. A lot of the older teachers I've seen are tearing it up, showing the young people how to do it. The only other issue I see with, wow, that's a huge issue to come up with that. Because I've looked at that in the past too and thought about like some of your best teachers are sometimes your youngest, least experienced. There's one more issue that I don't like. I don't like automatic pay increases because somebody took some more college classes or took some college degrees.
Maybe you suck as a teacher.
I did it myself. It's the reason I have a master's in education is because I wanted to bump my pay. So I took a few classes and suddenly I was the same teacher who took some useless neo-Marxist classes in education and I was getting paid more because of that degree. That didn't make any sense to me, but it was part of the rules, so I did that. We could go off for hours of what I think about our teacher prep at some of the universities, some of the things being taught to teachers that have nothing to do with teaching. But to bring it back to pay, we have to stick with the collective bargaining system as it is right now, as long as almost all teachers are public employees.
Well, it's certainly not an easy. I don't think that there's an easy answer to any of it. But I have never been the guy who says that just because you addressed this, but just to emphasize it, I've never been the guy that says just because you're in a job for a really long time that you deserve a raise. Frankly, what that says to me is if you've been in the same job for a decade or 2 decades and you haven't moved anywhere, that you are no more valuable to your employer.
Oh, right. I got to jump in there and defend the teachers on this one. I've never met anyone who goes into teaching with these aspirations that I'm going to get rich and I'm going to move up the ladder and I'm going to become principal and then I'm going to become superintendent. They do it because they want to do the job. And every year is a new batch of kids. Every year is a new adventure. So you're not doing the same thing over and over.
Well, I think go ahead, Ken, jump in here.
I just think that's part of why the school systems are the way they are, is that once somebody's been a successful teacher for a while, they want a chance to get rewarded and they go up and then train others. Sounds
we
reasonable.
Want that, by the way.
And then they become administrators and we can't get rid of them. But they're there forever. And so we've got the bee watcher situation with 3 layers of good people. There are no easy answers. I completely recognize that. But this system, as far as I'm concerned, needs some serious overhauls.
Well, I got to address something because you had mentioned that some critics of mine are listening. And
Oh,
so,
he's just a troll that was hammering me this
well,
morning.
I already know where their brains are buzzing right now because I heard Kelly say, as long as it's mostly government employees, you see, he wants to take down the entire system. He wants to privatize it all. I will say that a competitive system would produce better results for less money, but it's not realistic. No one's going to uproot the public school system, even in the states with the most robust school choice, Florida. 88% of kids still go to public schools. So our public schools are going nowhere. We don't have the big urban centers where we could actually have any real competition anyway. Rural schools are never going to have mixed school come in and compete against them. So anyone who's out there thinking that I'm going to try to come into this administrative elected position and destroy the public schools, no. I know the public schools are here to stay, and I want them to function as best as possible.
Well, and I think admitting that it's a very complicated situation and that no one thing is going to fix any of it. In fact, some of the ideas like merit-based pay that might be one of the things that destroys education, right? That you start focusing on, and this is where we get inflated grades. And being a college professor, I know that you're probably well attuned to this one.
I showed up for class. Why didn't I get an A?
Yeah, well, there was a report not that long ago that 80% of the grades that were given at Harvard were A's. You can't tell me that in a school like Harvard that 80% of those people in there are getting A's all the time. That's just not realistic. And so, if you have a system that's, based on purely student outcomes, well, then you want your student outcomes to be the highest and everybody gets an A. It's just not realistic.
And if you change it to testing, then they're constantly pushing to prepare for the test rather than doing the basics that they need.
Yeah. Now, I will say this, though, that the current system that we have, I think that it is a forever increasing bill that the state has to pay, that it goes up every year about $200 million. Well, every other year, $200 million. It's $100 million a year. And that's without the legislature doing anything. That's the escalators that are built in. That administration continues to grow. That enrollment in Wyoming is going down. At the same time, we're hiring more staff. And so I think the best that I could say right now is, well, what we have now ain't working. Because a lot of our kids cannot read at a proficient level. I went over to our college here. It's been a while. And I just asked the administration, or the admissions, not administration. Well, I guess admissions, never mind. I asked the admissions department. So what percentage of incoming freshmen have to take remedial courses? And they told me 70%. In one course or another. It might be English, it may be math, it may be, whatever. But 70% of graduating seniors have to take remedial courses. I think that's a terrible indictment of our public school system.
Well, maybe you'd call it an indictment of the public school system. It is definitely a red flag that we're not seeing what we need to see. And there are two different directions we can go. And I'm glad you brought this up because one direction is the new literacy law. More state control, more state mandates, more demanding success from Cheyenne or else. And there is an or else, that if you have too many kids who are not proficient, then you have to have new after-school programs, you have to have summer school programs. It's almost punitive. And you'll see people out there saying, you can't vote for Kelly because he tried to stop the literacy bill. Right. The literacy bill is going to teach literacy like the Affordable Care Act made healthcare affordable.
Right.
Or the Inflation Reduction Act to reduce inflation. Just because we called it a literacy bill and have all these new rules and mandates, that's exactly what's getting in the way of teachers being able to meet the kids where they're at and do what they need to do. More mandates, more training, more professional development. This idea that we have teachers who don't know how to teach kids how to read. So a few dozen people in Cheyenne are going to write this law up, and many people who have never been in a classroom and work with kids are going to demand excellency in literacy. Just because the intention is there doesn't mean the result is there. The opposite way to go is the way I would like to go as superintendent. Have the state take a step back and have a seat into a supportive role and trust the thousands of educators we have who are boots on the ground in the trenches with the kids, know their kids personally, and let them innovate some ideas to reach these kids rather than all this incredibly long list of things we have to do. There's one thing in the literacy bill that's a good idea, and that is universal screening for dyslexia.
Yeah.
But that could have been a nice slim bill, and that's it.
All right, so let's kind of switch gears a little bit. Let's say you get elected. We know that we've talked about some of the problems we have right now, but let's say you get elected. What are the, top 3 things you're going to work on?
Number one thing is find a place to live in Cheyenne. All right, all kidding aside, the first thing to do is to meet with districts. And I don't just mean superintendents and school boards. I mean, I need to meet some principals. I need to meet some teachers. I need to find out what's going on in the districts. How is the state making their life more miserable? That's the first thing I would like to do, is get a good collection in person, not online surveys, a little bit more than just having little town halls where the most vocal people show up. I would like to get some people to come and speak who normally don't speak up because they don't feel like there's any purpose in doing it, and ask them, what can I do to make your life easier? What is the state doing that makes it more difficult to reach the kids? And then step 2 would be to start going through the rules, the regulations, looking for redundancies, looking for vague policies that even districts are like, I don't know, just fill the form out and send it. And really step back on the incentives for districts to have to hire more administration to keep up with these regulations. That would be it. And the third thing to do would be to support students and parents, kids with IEPs, special education students who are not having their needs met. If we have any school boards, and this exists, it exists, whether some people want to admit it or not. We have some wonderful, mostly wonderful school board members, but sometimes we have school board members who dismiss parents too quickly.
Oh, yeah.
We're the professionals. We know better than you do. I was a teacher, you're not. And when that attitude comes across to parents, since I am for local control, and parents are ultimately the most local control, I'd like to be an advocate for families too when their school districts are failing them. So those are the 3.
All right, let's take another question from one of our viewers. Patrick wants to know, do you support awarding a high school diploma to someone who reads at a 9th grade level?
No.
How do we
No,
fix it?
absolutely not. Pushing for graduation levels is why we have like a 90% graduation rate, but according to YTOP, half our kids are proficient when they graduate. According to the nation's report card, only 1/3 are. So no, absolutely not. We shouldn't be focusing on graduation. We want proficiency in literacy, not self-esteem. And I understand the need for kids to have confidence. I was a special education teacher. But it's not good to have kids graduating feeling good about knowing nothing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and it's one of my big frustrations is that we're pushing out kids that can't read or don't know their multiplication tables, or why do I need to know that? I have the internet. I get
AI will
super
write it for
frustrated.
me, but that's a whole different animal. I've spoken to teachers, and long time and some retired teachers who lean left,
Mm-hmm.
and they've said, we really have to stop promoting kids who are complete. We have to stop this idea of just pushing them along because of their age. When you have a kid who can't read, they have to be able to show that they're ready for the next grade, because what does it do for, and this is not me saying this, these are teachers.
Right.
What does it do for their self-esteem when they go on to the next grade and it's even harder and they couldn't
And
do
they're
last
terrible
year's
at it.
stuff?
Yeah. Ken, what you got?
Well, forgive me if I take the reins for just a second.
Hijack my program.
Yeah, it never happens.
I
that
got
way, but-
29 all worked up.
Yeah, well, actually, you got me excited, and here's the deal. There's only so much one person can do about education in a statewide, certainly leadership sets the tone and can accomplish some things, and I'm excited about having you in that position. But I'm much more excited about having you on the SLIB board. That is a board of 5 people.
Making big decisions.
Big difference. And I have seen people who have been in office that I agree with how they handle their office, but when they get on the SLIB board, I just want to beat my head on a wall. And I have very seldom do I hear anybody ask you about the SLIB board. So I guess What are your views on that? What are your responsibilities? What's your mindset going in?
Well, the responsibilities are constitutional to maximize the proceeds from state lands to benefit the public school system. That would mean taking each proposal that comes to the SLIB on its own merit, and is this benefiting the schools or not? And there's some things I've seen come up that I don't think necessarily would, like subsidizing government housing. I don't see how that helps fund the school system. I'm not big on supporting projects that are dependent upon federal funding, because the feds can turn off that money at any second. So I have an issue with wind turbines and solar panel farms. We see those people will try and tell you, well, wind and solar are so cheap after you calculate the subsidies.
Right, after you suck up all of our tax
The news,
dollars.
go ahead and look it up if people don't believe me. The news articles are out there about the skyrocketing costs of solar and wind because the federal subsidies are pulled back. So we need to have projects that stand on their own merits in a market-based system that produce revenue. That being said, we need to maximize the usage of these lands, which means long-term projects, not short-term gains. I've heard it out there that I'm one of the people, oh, he's a libertarian. He just wants to sell all the government lands. Yeah, I'm a libertarian, but I'm not an idiot. And we're not going to just sell off all these lands for quick bucks. It was Steve brought it up at the debate about a quarter of the lands being sold off over the years. But, you know, Steve, Chad, and I were all on the same page. None of us are even going to entertain the idea of selling state lands for a quick buck, or making land trades, or giving somebody a better view of Devil's Tower, or whatever.
Right. Wouldn't know who we were talking. We wouldn't want to drop any names there, Ogden Driscoll.
You said it, not me. The last thing I would say about that is, when it comes to these things, you're going to see somebody who's very principled, level-headed, sober, and open-minded to speak on this lib. I don't think you're going to see me causing any fireworks. I didn't do it in the legislature. I got my point across, typically without stepping on people's toes. And
Yeah, and some would say in the legislature, you just laid down. Sorry.
you had to bring in that herniated disc at some
Oh,
point.
man. Well, it had to come
You know,
up,
I'm
man.
so happy the fact that I even forgot about it, that it's healed.
Yeah.
That God
Nice
willing,
going,
it healed up
Ken.
that
Yeah.
well. But
Bring
you
it up
will not
again.
see me on the slip board ask anyone to step outside.
Well, you know, that was one of the questions that came up at the debate, and I was watching your faces when I asked the question. And you didn't really respond. You were just like, yeah, okay, we can talk about this.
I'm autistic. I always respond like that.
Yeah, the other two, like Steve's, Representative Harshman's eyes got about as big as his 50-cent piece. He didn't see that one coming. And what a lot of people don't realize is that all of our 5 statewide elected officials have a vote on the slip board. In other words, they're to represent their specific office, whatever that is, Superintendent of Public Instruction in this case, represent those interests on the slip board, and the job of the slip board is to manage the state lands and investment. And so the theory being that you would maximize those decisions for your particular wheelhouse. And I couldn't agree with you more on the solar, the wind projects. We've seen a lot of what I consider to be Looney Tune ideas. The synthetic jet fuel idea, that was moronic. Wow, I can't believe that they voted for it. And to his credit, Chuck was a big opponent to that. So I don't know. I mean, it's the slib is interesting in that, a lot of the decisions have been, well, we're supposed to maximize revenue, so we have to take any project. And there are a number of those that have happened.
And some of that maximization of revenue was based on exactly what I'm wary of, federal subsidies.
Yes.
Yeah, that's short-sighted. That's what I mean. Those aren't not long-term investments, hoping the feds don't cut the funds.
All right, so one more issue that I want to ask you about, and I know a lot of our viewers would hoist me on my own petard if I didn't bring this one up. Okay, so you're a guy that is very well aware of IEPs, kids with disabilities. You've got a son with Down syndrome. And so I need to ask you about what was happening in Sweetwater County with Rock Springs. Parents made a lot of complaints to the superintendent. A lot of their private information got released to the public. It's a really bad situation. So, and first, let me ask you: are you aware of that? What was going on
I'm
down there?
aware of what happened. I'm aware of what was in the news stories and what some people have told me privately, but I can't say I have intimate knowledge of
Okay,
it.
fair enough. So, just kind of broadly speaking, what would you have done differently with that situation than what our current superintendent of public instruction did? I know it's a broad question, but kind of gives you some
Well,
room
okay,
to navigate.
rather than speak for Megan at all and compare what like I would do compared to what she
Mhm.
would do and do the Monday morning quarterback thing on her, let's just say what I would do regardless of who's
Fair
currently
enough.
the superintendent and what she decided to do. The first thing I would have done was shown up in person for the district to find out what's going on and talk to people face to face and have some real conversations. Maybe sometimes you even need to have these conversations offline because when you send an official email to somebody or whatever, there's a chance to get
It goes everywhere.
defensive, right? And obfuscate facts because you're worried you're getting in trouble. Having been a special ed teacher with kids with severe behavior disorders, the best way to find out what happened in a fight was not come in with the attitude everyone's in trouble. It was to come in and say, slow down. What's happening? What's going on? How can I help? What's the issue? How can we fix this? So that's probably, I don't know exactly what the superintendent's office did at this point, but if it's something, if parents are coming forth with some really egregious accusations, if there's any type of merit to it, I think the superintendent should show up on the scene and meet with people. Because these were not everyday occurrences.
No.
I mean, we do have instances of poor kids with their IEPs maybe not being met the way they need to be. But I did hear about some of the instances, and
They're not good.
that is where I see the superintendent be an advocate for parents and kids. And I, as superintendent, I would open my line up to students contacting me directly.
Now we did a lot of reporting with the Open Range Record on that, just simply because some of our writers live in that area, and I think out of all of the articles we published, I can say this one thing, that they all have in common, is that it's a group of parents that that were kind of broken, that they had a problem, they went to the school, problem not addressed, went to the superintendent, problem not addressed, went to the next person at the state level, that got all bungled, for whatever reason. I mean, we don't have to go in, like you said, Monday morning quarterback it. But in the end, the real problem with that whole situation is the concerns of the parents weren't met. For at whatever level you want to talk about it, but you had parents that they believed, and in some cases they were right, that their kids were not being treated the way they should have been, and a lot of it boiled down to IEPs. And so, last question I want to ask you, Tom. So, given your time in the legislature, you mentioned the literacy bill. You've got your son has some developmental challenges. What would you say we need to do to help those kids who have some of those challenges, IEPs, reading difficulties, perhaps behavioral problems? What do we need to do to help them a little bit more?
The issues and the children are so diverse. There is no one size fits all policy. And this just goes back into my whole philosophy that the cumulative knowledge and wisdom and experience of our thousands of educators, teachers, paraprofessionals, school psychologists, counselors vastly outweighs my college degrees, my decades of teaching, my experience, my intellect, whatever, pales in comparison to what all of our teachers know together. It's a matter of decentralizing power and authority, and we have to have more trust in our professional educators to meet the kids where they are. I would like to be able to support districts and teachers when they say, we've got this issue, we need to do this, how can the state help, rather than tell them, this is how you will all treat all kids. Think about what an IEP is. Individualized education plan. How do you have a state policy for every individual? You can't do it. There's got to be more trust in our educators to educate. And I know some of my conservative friends, you see the blue-haired they, them on libs of TikTok ranting about how America's some horrible patriarchy that we have to take down, and Mom Demi's a hero. And you get scared that that's all teachers. In Wyoming, no, not even close. 99% of teachers are good, great, wonderful people of their community doing the best they can for their kids. And I beg my conservative friends to have a little bit more faith in people who decide to go into education.
All right, Tom. Appreciate you being a good sport.
There's one more thing I'd like to say.
Go right ahead.
And I would like, this is to my friends out there, especially those who are out there putting out that false narrative of Freedom Caucus. Everyone who's conservative is now Freedom Caucus.
It was just fascinating.
I would just like, the biggest critic of the Freedom Caucus in media has been my good friend Rod Miller, and he was the first person to contribute to my campaign. So if I'm Freedom Caucus, everybody, Rod Miller is pro-Freedom Caucus.
Well, I would love to see you try to get him to admit that. All right, Tom.
I asked him if it was okay to say something. He goes, I want people to know I gave to you.
Excellent. Well, he's an interesting character. We were pals at one time. Anyway, if my viewers want to get a hold of you, how do they do that, Tom?
All right. So I picked my website out late at night and it was available, but I'll stick with it. It's supertomkelly.com.
I like it. supertomkelly.com. All right. Well,
As in superintendent, not extraordinary feats.
No, I've got a Batman suit, and instead of I've got a big T on the chest now, and I'm just going to fly down in the Cheyenne and fix everything magically.
I should say this as well. It is really good to see you up and moving around and comfortable again. I was really disappointed that you were disabled.
I'm so sorry I left you alone in the trenches when you were fighting the WAB. I mean the WBC. Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
so many letters.
Well, it's government, and they love acronyms. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk with Representative Steve Johnson. Flock cameras. Can't wait for this one.
I'd love to talk about that one too.
Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. I'm your host, David Iverson. Documented to be almost always right,
99% of the time.
That's part of why we took the break, and then
We didn't do anything.
we'll blame it on Tom.
Yeah, well, all right. So welcome back to the program. I've got Agent 29, Representative Tom Kelly, and now I've got Representative Steve Johnson. Steve, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, David and Ken and Thomas. I'm glad to be here, and I've got some exciting bill that I'm bringing out, and it's really important that we understand what's going on with our surveillance throughout the city, throughout the state. We did not agree to be surveilled by a private corporation, and I want to bring this to the point that they're making money on us, on our pictures, on everything. So there's a lot to cover here, and I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating topic. So first, why don't you, it's been a really long time since you've been on the show. So why don't you take a minute or two and tell my audience about yourself, what you're running for. Give us the coordinates.
Well, I'm representing House District 8, which is North Cheyenne, the Ranchettes area. I'm doing this I'm in the legislature for my grandchildren and the future of Wyoming. I would like Wyoming to be what I grew up in, and not what's definitely happening in the state legislature, in big business and big corporations taking over, and the welfare state for the well-connected. We just need to stop all of that and get back to Wyoming roots.
Okay, now this will be your second term, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
now you've got an opponent. How do you think your race is going?
I think I'm doing very good. Just door to door, and I'm not going to let up though. I've still got to hit him hard and hit him wherever I can. So he's got platitudes, Wyoming's going to be this beautiful, pleasant utopia society, and just do what he says and we'll be fine.
Yeah, with a whole bunch of EV chargers.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Let's get into state surveillance of your vehicle right away.
Yeah. All right. So you're ready for re-election. If you are successful, what is it that you want to work on?
Oh my goodness. I think this is a very important bill. I think surveillance is terrible. I would like to decrease property taxes. That's a big one for us. And a lot of people believe that we're being taxed out of existence. We have no control over how we are taxed on our properties. And we're working on that diligently throughout the interim. Food Freedom Act. If I get into this, it's a whole nother rabbit hole. But let me just say that Hippie Cow Creamery, if you go there to buy raw milk and raw cream, and you want that raw cream in a latte, that latte becomes a product, and the Department of Agriculture will not let them sell that product to you, even knowing you went there specifically for raw cream in your latte. I think we need to bring common sense back into the government.
So now wait a minute, Steve. We've got the Food Freedom Act. I thought that was supposed to cover all of that stuff. If I want to go buy a gallon of milk, we've got a store right down the street from the studio where I can go buy milk, straight from some dairy farm. I thought we had all that covered. Why are we having this hippie cow problem?
It's not covered, and there's rules in the Department of Agriculture that need to be changed. We've just lost common sense, and I think we've lost it not just the Department of Agriculture, we've lost it throughout the state government. We have so many rules now that just absolutely do not make sense. And that's, the common person, you'll tell them about hippie cow or why fresh, and why the rancher had to sell his product out of a freezer in Cheyenne, when his job should be just to produce cattle.
Right.
He should allow an agent to sell his beef. There's several instances that we just need common sense back into government.
Well, I agree with you. In my mind, if I walk into a store and there's a big sign on the door that says "Enter at your own risk. We take no responsibility for what you buy in our store. Have a nice day." I should be able to think, well, okay, so if I buy something from this producer, then it's on me. I see no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that.
Exactly. I, um, I'm with you all the way. You know, the majority of people in Wyoming, they want to be left alone. Let us live our lives free. Let us enjoy our faith in God and country and family. Leave us alone.
All right, so let's talk about this. Tom wants to get in on this.
Thanks. Hey, Steve, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah.
This just reminds me really quickly of something I said on the House floor last year, and that was basically, as legislators, our job is not to protect competent adults from themselves.
No,
That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. If we can't take responsibility for ourselves, we're a lost society. You know, you take responsibility every time you get in a car and don't put on your seatbelt. You have to put responsibility is on your own conscience.
Well, and I think Agent 29 said it best when he said, "Freedom is dangerous, and it's supposed to be dangerous." And when the government steps in and says, "Oh, we're going to protect you from everything," I mean, but we got laws like that all over the place, and one of those, maybe it's not a law yet, it probably should be, is on this surveillance stuff, flock cameras. What are we talking about there, Steve?
It's not just flock cameras. It's flock cameras, Leonardo signal trace, halo smoke detectors, uh, uh, facial ID, facial recognition.
Okay, I don't mean to interrupt you, Steve, but can you explain what all of those things are? I don't even know if some of our listeners know what flock cameras are.
So flock camera, it was sold as a bill of goods that if we put all these cameras on our streets, we'll be safer. We'll be able to catch children as they're kidnapped. We'll be able to investigate a car crash immediately. We'll have all this police infrastructure that will allow them to do their job much better. The only problem is when you have a corrupt policeman. I'm just going to go off on a tangent.
For instance,
for instance, is recently divorced, and he uses flock cameras to surveil his wife's every move with her new boyfriend or new whatever she's doing. That should be against the law, and it's not. I think if you're in a divorce proceeding and you have surveillance of your significant partner that you're divorcing, that's criminal. That's a surveillance. That's stalking. Why is this any different?
So why don't our stalking laws cover that?
Well, it's new technology. One, flock cameras are not owned by the city or state. They are leased to the city and state. So that makes them a private property. And that gets into a whole new other thing. Nobody has really said, we want flock cameras in our city or our state or our county. There's never been, except for Green River. They recently had a city council meeting and discussed this. But most of these flock cameras are just brought in, not knowing where they are, what they're doing, and how much surveillance they provide. It's almost criminal. So Flock has made a business out of your information as a corporation. They're about a $7+ billion corporation right now, and they've just grown to that extent in just the last 5 years.
All right, let me get a question in from our audience real quick,
Okay.
and that is, isn't a private security camera an exercise of freedom?
If it is taking pictures of your property, you're protecting you and not taking images of the public. The public has no idea that they're being surveilled. They're just driving to work or going to the store to get a gallon of milk.
So, wow.
Wow. Hold on, I'll fix it. Go ahead and talk, Ken.
So, I read your bill, Steve. I've also read some of the comments that were put into that. and I think it's very good. You mentioned flock cameras, and then earlier you mentioned a few other items. I think it would be good to kind of go through those real quick and what are they? A lot of people are unaware that these things are even there. And then
Yes.
a little bit about the idea of, and you touched on it, that technology is just outpacing the green books.
Well, as it should, by the way. But go ahead, Steve.
Well, let's start with Leonardo signal trace. So you have a flock camera and it takes a picture of your license plate. They have your name or the owner of that vehicle. If you have a Bluetooth device, earbuds or a cell phone or anything that emits a signal, they connect that signal with your license plate. So they've connected that signal wherever you go in the world to the name of the owner of that vehicle. If I get in David's vehicle and we go through one of these checkpoints and they connect my Bluetooth signal with David's Bluetooth signal, well, we could be accomplices in some future crime that they cook up. You can see how this grows, and they'll connect all the dots. They'll know every friend I have in Wyoming eventually, and I think that's not what we signed on for.
Well, there was a Supreme Court ruling, I think it may have come out just last week, that the police cannot use, geofencing and then go on a fishing trip. They have to have probable cause to surveil you.
There's another term that needs a definition is geofence. So before we go too far.
Okay, so geofencing.
I had to look at a lot of these things because I wasn't even aware of what all's going on.
Yeah, I mean, we're throwing around a lot of terms, but what geofencing is you define a specific area on a map, and I mean, like with a Facebook ad, for example. I can tell Facebook where I want to run the ad, and so what I do is I draw a little box around Laramie County, and I say, run this ad in Laramie County. Well, the same thing happens, well, not anymore, but used to happen with law enforcement. What they would do is just define a little area on the map, and then they would take all of the cell phone data from that one area, and then they would say, okay, well, this person's hanging out, Tom is hanging out with Ken, who is hanging out with David, and therefore there's a crime. So it's this giant fishing trip, and there's no probable cause for them to surveil Tom or Ken. It's just now they've got the data. Well, that's what the Supreme Court overturned last week or the week before.
So let me bring to your attention that this is a corporation, and there are no rules of law enforcement or anything else. Once they have your data, they can do what they want. It's their data. Their patent is to store videos, and that's what their patent implies. So yeah, it's great that law enforcement can't do that, but a private or a corporation can, and they can do it to make money. They can share your information with anybody they want. If you have a recent ding on your bumper and they share that information with your car insurance company, you might just get an increase in your car insurance.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how they're selling this data.
And
I think it's really important to distinguish between law enforcement and private corporation. Now, the police department are going to be held liable if they use this information in a trial or anything else. They will be held accountable and can be sued.
Steve, I have to ask, you mentioned smoke detectors. How are smoke detectors being used to invade privacy?
All right. So you get these public restrooms, and they have a halo smoke detector in there. And it catches a key phrase like, let's say bomb. Well, it's not just the key word they catch every word of that sentence. They catch everything you're saying. Even though they say they're looking for terrorists.
So it's
who's
a
to define
listening
who's
device?
a terrorist? It's a listening device that is disguised as a smoke detector. Well, let's say you're in this restroom and you talk to a friend next to, washing your hands, whatever, you're talking to him, and you both have your Bluetooth on, and you say bomb, well, you're both automatically terrorist suspects. We're going to be looking at you over, with a fine tooth comb.
So could we not just pass a bill, Steve, that says, no public electronic surveillance? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems to be that there are so many different and new technologies, the halo smoke detectors, the cameras on the streets, if I'm talking with Ken about a new gun we want to buy, I'm going to see an ad on my cell phone, in the next 30 minutes. So talk to me about the bill that you've got. What does it do?
Well, let me open it up. Let me start. It's an act relating to criminal procedure, providing legislative findings, prohibiting police officers and political subdivisions from utilizing specified surveillance and artificial intelligence technologies, providing penalties, and making conforming amendments, and providing for an effective date. So we are trying to outlaw all these forms of surveillance that are currently here, and we hope that we can catch the ones that are waiting in the wings, the new technology that shouldn't be allowed anyway.
Okay, so now a lot of cities use cameras that grab your license plate at a stop sign. You blow through a stop sign, takes a picture of your vehicle, or toll booths, or speeding cameras, whatever. Is this the same thing as that?
It's even worse than that. This doesn't just take a picture of your license plate. It'll take a picture of any bumper stickers you have on, any if you're a Broncos fan, or it collects all the information that is available on that vehicle, the color of it, the make of it, the year of it. So that vehicle has a definite ID with several characteristics, can be identified right away.
How prevalent are these devices in Wyoming, Steve?
Well, City of Cheyenne has 18 or 19 of them. And I've got to say something about DFLOC. It's dfloc.org. And you as a private citizen can, when you're driving around and you notice a flock camera, you can go on dfloc.org and say, this flock camera is here and it's taking a picture of this road. And that is, so far, that's been one of our best fighting methods against flock. Garrett Langley, the owner, that CEO of Flock Cameras, actually called anybody involved in DFLOC as a terrorist and alongside Antifa.
Of course he did.
So we might be getting into his pocketbook.
Yeah, maybe. But and Ken mentioned this earlier, that our legislatures are always behind technology. And so everything you do in the legislature is always reactionary. And by the way, I think that that's a good thing. I don't think that we need to be passing laws proactively and, hey, this might be a problem in the future. I mean, that's where you get, more and more and more and more green books, and there's already a stack of them about this long.
Yes.
So about your bill, does it just outlaw any public surveillance? Does it cover, I don't know, cameras at crosswalks? I mean, get into the specifics of it for me.
Yes, any surveillance of people without their knowledge will be against the law. If you're walking on the street and you're caught on the flock camera, and they say you're walking a dog, well,
let me jump in there and just ask a question, because it's been brought up. What about my Ring camera that I have on my front porch? By your last definition, that would be against the law, but I don't believe that's what this bill is trying to accomplish. So
no,
just to
it
clarify.
would not be against the law, because that is protecting your private property. You have a right to surveil your property and protect it.
Okay, what about a department store?
Well, the same thing. They can use closed circuit cameras that catch thieves in their store. So, yeah, that's perfectly legal to protect your own property. it's not right for you to take that camera and turn it out in the parking lot. That would be against the law.
Okay, so one more question. I know I'm throwing out a whole bunch of specifics for you here, but I think that I'm just watching the comments, and there's quite a few of them asking about different particulars. So in Sheridan, I think the camera is on top of a building, kind of like mid downtown, and it looks down on the square that's right in the middle of the town, and you can get on there and you can see what's going on in town. Now it's not a nice enough camera where you can zoom in and see what color a purse some woman is carrying, but it's still surveilling a public space. Would that be covered under your bill?
Yes. There should be no surveillance of people without their knowledge.
Okay, Ken?
Yeah, you can also go to websites like the Y-Dots, and you can see webcams on the highway, so you can check road conditions at various places. It may be up at Burgess Junction. They try to show them on I-80, but it basically says the same thing all the time. It's windy as hell and nasty.
Yeah.
Would this bill preclude traffic cameras, meaning
No.
not catching license plates, but looking at traffic conditions, webcams?
Traffic conditions would be perfect. They're not surveilling you. They're showing you weather conditions. And if you've seen any of those videos, you're lucky if you can make out a semi in some of those storms. So it's not a license plate reader. It would make it against the law for those weather cameras to start collecting license plate data.
All right, I got another question for you. Wyoming is a one-party state, meaning that you can record anybody and you don't have to tell them that you're recording them. I'm a journalist. I do that often. I go into a meeting and I might have a hot mic on me just because I know the people are in there are going to say something strange that would sound great in my program. But in Wyoming, you don't have to inform anybody that you're recording them. What effect would your bill have on Wyoming being a one-party state?
That would not have any bearing at all. That's between you and whoever you're talking to. It's not the uninformed masses. So if I come to you, David, and want to have a conversation, I understand I'm probably going to be recorded.
Maybe sometimes.
But on my way to your office, I don't think I should worry about being recorded going into your office. Now let's go back a few years ago. If these flock cameras were really as proliferant as they are now in the pandemic, if they could tell you at 8:30 every Sunday you pass these two cameras, they would have pretty good probability that you're going to church. Well, they didn't want you to go to church. It's all right to go to a dispensary, but that's where I'm leading with this technology. Once they know where you're going, and it depends on who's in charge of the law, they're going to say, if you're not hiding anything, why are you afraid of this? Well, I'm going to ask you, who's making the laws?
Right.
I am scared to death of this.
Well, and we all have a constitutional right to be able to freely assemble with whom we choose. The whole, it being a crime if there's three or more of you on a street corner, that went the way of the British when they went back to London. So here, you can assemble with anybody that you want, and the government doesn't have any business in it. And it seems to me that in many cases, governments, local governments, state governments, what have you, use private companies to say, okay, well, it's not us doing the surveillance, it's this company over here. And that's the problem. So another question, if I'm just trying to be a little bit critical here. So where does this stop, right? Your bill clearly says a private company cannot put up a camera outside their building and look down at the street. Where does it stop? What other activities are we going to prevent that private companies and private individuals do? I mean, what safeguards are in your bill to prevent that?
To prevent new technology from taking over where this has been.
Or for government to say, you can't do X, Y, or Z because we think it's surveillance or whatever. What
Yeah, I think
safeguards are in your bill?
well, I think that's up to the legislature. Now, safeguards are that we're just not going to allow this right now. We can't allow this surveillance to proliferate. Um, it's a lot more nefarious than anybody ever thinks. Now, let me bring up Palantir Technologies. They probably know what you all had for breakfast. They are hackers with the Defense Department. So imagine if you take your debit card to Walmart and buy a gallon of milk, they'll know when that milk is going to expire and when you need to go get more milk. That's where we're going with technology.
Well, they already make, I mean, you can already buy a refrigerator that is, Wi-Fi connected. I don't know why you would want to do that. But
Yeah.
anyway, your refrigerator can monitor the things that are in there, to tell you when they have their own personality or not.
Yeah, you hook it up right. Your refrigerator can go ahead and order supplies, and they'll be delivered on your doorstep without you needing to do a thing.
I mean,
Technology, yeah.
yeah, I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but apparently now you can do that with a refrigerator. So I think
So
it's amazing.
Once they have this knowledge of your movements and your traffic and what your actions are, they can predict what you're going to do next, your next move. So that's a pretty scary scenario there. If a private corporation can predict what you're going to do, anything from mentioning that your wife is pregnant to having diaper commercials on your social media in 2 hours, I think everybody's sick of the surveillance we're under now, and this has just brought it to the forefront.
I think you're right about that.
We've been surveilled for 10 years since the internet. It's technology's gotten ahead of us, and we just don't know what we're up against.
Well, and if you go back to the post 9/11 Patriot Act, everybody was worried that the NSA was listening to all of their phone calls. Well, they really weren't. They were monitoring the metadata. So who you called, how long the call was, who that person called, and if they collected enough metadata, they didn't need to listen to your phone call. They could tell everything that you were going to talk about. Just from the data that they collected. And I think when you add video on top of it with these flock cameras, I find it a very, very terrifying scenario where the government knows exactly where I'm going to go when I'm going to do it.
Yes.
All right. So, Steve, I got to run. But why don't you give me your little elevator pitch? And if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, I'm Steve Johnson, House District 8, 307-640-0707. And I want to throw out a pitch for Dr. John Padfield, who brought me into this knowledge of this flock camera technology. He'll be in Cheyenne August 6th with his Brush Fire Tours symposium. He'll tell you more about flock cameras and surveillance of the people. So hope everybody can come to Cheyenne August 6th.
All right. And if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Johnson, FORE, HD8 at gmail.com or 307-640-0707.
All right, Steve. Well, I appreciate it, my friend. Good luck in your race. Keep me posted on how things are going, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you in the near future.
I haven't even told you my horror stories, and I should have gotten a few of those in, but I didn't.
Well,
we'll
if
have
you
to
can hang
schedule
out
another time.
If you can hang out through the break, then we'll hold you over. So hang tight.
Okay.
We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back in a minute. We're visiting with Representative Steve Johnson, House District 8. Back in a minute. The calendar says that it's summer, and you'll believe it. Well, that's just so cute.
But you obviously haven't lived here very long, have you? And you probably think that the weather is just going to continue to warm up. You don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland. France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only getting stronger. This program is only continuing to expand. Over 100,000 views last month, almost 500,000 already this year. Cowboy State Politics is Wyoming's #1 political podcast. Welcome back to the program, my friends. I'm your host, David Iverson, doing what I was born to do each and every day with talent given to me by the man upstairs himself. Oh, and you're muted.
Which means that's probably a good thing. If talent was given to you by God himself, that means you'd better not refuse to do these things.
This is true. That is a very good point.
You're
Ken.
under some compulsion.
Yes, I am. You know, it's not just me. The big man is saying, David, you got to do this stuff.
Steve is under some compulsion too. Welcome back, Steve.
Yeah, welcome back to the program. We're
I
visiting.
understand what God is asking me to do, and I'm doing it.
All right. So just to catch you up, if you're just now joining us, we're visiting with Representative Steve Johnson from House District 8 in Laramie County. That's kind of the northern part of Cheyenne, kind of out in the boonies a little bit. But we're talking about flock cameras and surveillance in general. Sounds a lot like 1984 to me, Steve. But I hear before the break, you mentioned that you've got some horror stories. Why don't you tell me a couple of those?
Let me tell you the first horror story I heard. And it was a preschool in Dunwoody, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. Flock camera. This preschool already had closed circuit TVs in all the rooms, the hallways, the parking lot. Flock approaches them and says, hey, let us tie into your feed and we'll record all this. And if there's an active shooter, we'll be able to notify the police right away, and we'll shut it down. It sounds great. It's only one problem is that there's no compulsion for flock camera to keep that video secret. So one of the, they've told the preschool that, nobody will look at this unless there's a criminal process or it needs to be looked at. Right. Well, one father thought, well, I'm just going to check into this. He looked at the logs of who was viewing what in that preschool. There were two executives from Flock Camera that were only interested in the gymnastic room and the swimming pool. So if that doesn't scare you, I mean, there's predators throughout society, but we're just allowing them to see what our children are doing, and that was just one story. That one was one that really got me, because I love my children, I love my grandchildren, and would do anything to protect them. And if we think we're going to have some sort of safety at this expense, it's not worth it.
Well, and I think that the larger issue is that government seems to be more increasingly using private industry to skirt laws that we already have. I mean, it is a law against, videotaping, what a little child is doing inside of a school. And now I'm sure they have closed circuit TV, but that child has a right to privacy just as much as anybody, maybe in some cases more so than some of us do. And you have a right to assemble with whomever you want. You have the freedom of movement wherever you want to go, without having to inform the government. But when government is in bed with private industry, and that private company is surveilling, whatever part of town, and then giving that information back to, law enforcement or whatever, that is a gigantic invasion of your Fourth Amendment rights. And, and the truth is, and I've said this a lot, that if you carry around one of these things, this is the greatest surveillance tool ever invented. And, so I think that we have to be very, very careful with, with government getting in bed with private companies. Ken?
Do you have time?
Yeah, hold on. Just a second.
More story?
I wanted to make a comment there and get your reaction, Steve. We read this bill. I know where you're coming from. I know what you're concerned about, and have a pretty good idea what you're really not concerned about. But we're talking about schools, and I'm thinking, okay, a lot of schools have cameras inside that. That's technically a public space and for safety. The way that this bill gets written is going to have to be very thorough. It's going to have to be very specific in exactly what we're not going to tolerate, because public surveillance of one sort or another has become so much a part of our life, and for acceptable reasons, or so we might think anyway. Where do you draw the lines? Private surveillance of private property. Okay, now you got a private parking lot. Maybe beyond that, there's a public parking lot. I mean, you could what if yourself to death, and that's going to be the difficulty in getting this bill passed, getting some traction, and not having it have some unexpected consequences. Any thoughts on that, Steve?
I think that closed circuit TVs in schools, they're a political subdivision, and it would be easy to control. They should be controlled. They should see who's watching what. I don't think they need to record and save the video footage. I think that's wrong. But I think this was a private school and a private corporation that was doing this. I do think that as a political subdivision or schools or county or whatever, we have some control over what they're doing, and we should allow this same penalty to be inflicted on them if they violate these rules. You should be able to sue them for taking pictures of your child in school in a compromising situation. I think that's allowable.
Let me give you just kind of a for instance one that's just kind of coming through my mind. On face, I think that I do think that we should have some surveillance outside of a school. Maybe a camera pointed down at the entrance of a school, see who's coming and going. I mean, that sounds to be, pretty reasonable, right? But from the entrance to the school to the sidewalk, and I'm thinking about the middle school up on here in Sheridan, the one that's kind of up on the hill. But it's right beside a road, and there's a sidewalk that's right there. And so where do you draw the line between the school protecting the entrances, who's coming and going into the school, and protecting the guy that's just walking down the sidewalk? I mean, He doesn't have anything to do with the school, and yet he's on camera, and he doesn't. He has a right not to be surveilled. So, I mean, like Ken said, I think this one's kind of a real tricky one. Where do you draw the line between his right to privacy and, taking care of the school? I mean, that seems to be pretty prickly to me.
I think that a private camera should not be able to surveil somebody without their knowledge. If they're taking a picture and it includes the sidewalk, I think they need to pull that camera in and just protect the school. I don't think citizens should be surveilled at all or have their picture taken or without their knowledge.
I think part of this difficulty, we're going to have to say that, and I'm considering co-sponsoring this bill with you, so I'm working on the arguments that we're going to face. I think that we have to say certain areas like public schools or whatever are under surveillance, and that if you approach within a certain
20
area
yards,
of that,
30 yards, whatever it is,
because we all have our children in there, and I would disagree, Steve, that it would not be necessary to record those. I think if there was an incident at the school, having that video footage would be really good to have to be able to give it some evidence as far as what did or did not happen. So I can see that, but there may be certain places that we're going to have to say, a courthouse or, a public building like that.
Sure.
Maybe limitations within the building. All I'm getting at is there's going to be a lot of thought and a lot of what ifs that come into this before this bill is.
Well, think about the Wyoming Capitol. Okay, if you get anywhere near the Capitol, you're on camera.
Yep.
And I think, I've seen some images of where there's a camera pointed out the front door and it's got the square right in front and you can see quite a ways down the street. You can, all around that place, there are cameras. And, if you even just drive by and you're going downtown to the Met or whatever, you're probably going to be on camera. And so, where is your expectation of privacy when you go by a government building? One more little, and let me just add on top of that, okay? So, considering schools, we don't want to have private surveillance, but what about the guy with the creeper van that's driving back and forth on the street in front of the school? We would want to know about him, right? That seems to be reasonable too, but what about all the other people that are driving down the street that are not in the creeper van? And I know we're what-ifing this to death.
Yeah, we're going to want enough. I think there's enough grizzly bear moms that if they see a van going up and down their school when they're picking up their children, somebody's going to report that. And I don't think we need a camera for that. I would like to also bring up that the highway patrol cameras that you're talking about, they're limited. They cannot keep that recording for an indefinite period of time. That is lost. They don't keep it for perpetuity.
Apparently, the highway patrol in the Capitol building doesn't do that either.
Especially if we want to access it, you can't.
Yes, we noticed that, didn't we, Ken?
We did. It is selective.
Well, I think this is a fascinating piece of legislation, and I think that in some way or another, we're going to have some restrictions on what companies can surveil and what government has access to. And so, I think you guys are both right that we could what if this thing to death. But I think buried inside those what ifs are the exceptions to where, sometimes rights get violated. And I don't think that I would ever want to be in a situation where I have to sacrifice my rights when I'm not doing anything wrong, just because we're, protecting a city hall or we're protecting the Capitol building or a school. So I think that there's some big questions here.
So let me tell you one instance where that happened.
Okay.
Christiana Elser was accused of being a porch pirate. Columbine Valley Police Chief Sergeant Jamie Millman shows up at her door and says, "We have video of you. You've been in this town 20 times surveilling packages." That's what he accused her of. He says, "This package was stolen off this porch, and this Ring camera looks a lot like you." He didn't say that. He says, it's you. You can plead guilty and we'll be done with this, or we're going to go to court. And she says, well, let me see the video. He says, I can't do that. You have to go to court. So he is strong-arming her to go to court. Well, in his first statement is, you can't get a breath of fresh air without us knowing.
Whoa.
That is what he told her. Well, here's this poor lady's, just out of the blue, this guy comes and accuses her of being a felon, and her only recourse was that she had data cameras, windshield cameras, that showed her in different places at different times, and they finally, the mayor of Columbine got in the middle of it and said, hey, let's see the evidence. You're strong-arming this lady. Well, the Ring doorbell was definitely a lot younger girl. She had blonde hair and was thin and, basically resembled her. But if you look closer at it, there was no facial ID. There's no way to tell. But when you're accused of a crime, just because you had your picture taken 20 times, I think that's criminal. That's awful, and we shouldn't ever go down that path.
Well, yeah, we gotta have probable cause to surveil somebody, and I think that's what the Supreme Court ruling was saying with the geofencing, is that you have to have probable cause that somebody has committed a crime before you can start investigating them, or you can start surveilling them. And with a lot of these, the flock cameras, the smoke detectors you mentioned, there's no probable cause there. It's just one big giant fishing trip, and I think that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Steve. Well, I appreciate you joining
Thank
the
you.
program, and good luck in your race, and just keep us posted. All right.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate being on here.
All
Thank
right. That was Steve Johnson, and he's running for House District 8 down in Laramie County. Fascinating subject, Ken. That we are being surveilled all the time, and most of us probably don't even know it. I keep complaining about that camera over at the intersection, but, we got to have a conversation about our Fourth Amendment rights.
Can you imagine the upcoming discussions on the House floor?
Wow.
when this hits that? I mean, it's a fascinating subject, and I do think something needs to be done. But, even just sitting here, there were some things that came up that I hadn't already thought of, and there are going to be a lot more. So this is something that's going to take a lot of time and interest. So, in our neighborhood, it's not quite as exciting as your neighborhood, Ken, but there have been a couple instances where something has happened across the street. Those are the exciting people. And we've had law enforcement come to us and say, hey, can we get a look at your video camera? Mm-hmm. And I've said, from when to when? And, they said, well, we need, this many hours. And I've said no. But, we can, you tell me the specific time, I'll look and see if there's something there. Now, in one case, we didn't have any cameras, and there was a bad situation that happened there, and drunk driver, that sort of thing. And we didn't really have any cameras that would cover that. Now, how often do policemen, something happens, and they go around the neighborhood and see who has a Ring camera? Well, that's not government surveillance. That's the police asking the public for help. I see that no difference there between saying, hey, did you see something? Yeah. Are you a witness to something complex, messy issue? Yeah. And, we mentioned department stores, and, that's private property. Yeah. And you have a right to defend your private property. Yeah. And I think you also have to be reasonable as someone walking around and understand, like we talked about schools or government buildings. These are places where you don't have that expectation of privacy. Well, and a lot of those places, you should know that you're being surveilled. Yeah, I think the Capitol building. It should be prominently posted. Yeah. I mean, I think you walk up to the door, and I'm pretty sure it's posted on the door as government surveillance. I've had the opportunity twice now to go down into the control room in the Capitol, and there are screens 180 degrees all the way around the room and showing you every camera angle. And I went there and thought, wow, I thought when I walked in appropriation, no, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
Can't necessarily read what's on your desk, but everywhere you go in that building, and frankly, for good reason.
Sure. It's a government. I mean, it's where the governor's at and all of you guys. And I think that's appropriate. And I think that if you're going to approach those buildings, whether it be a school or city hall or the courthouse or whatever, that you should expect to be on camera.
Yeah, it just recently, we actually got to see some of the footage of when somebody came and left a device at the front of the Capitol. And someone in their infinite wisdom picked it up and took it inside.
Yeah, God. Hey, I wonder what this is. Somebody left you a package and they dropped it.
Yeah, we didn't get to see that.
Yeah. Anyway, my friends, fascinating discussion, and I think it's one that we're going to have. But I want to be very careful that we are cognizant of everybody's Fourth Amendment rights. We all have a right to be secure in our persons and our property, and we also have a right not to be surveilled. So there are a lot of considerations with this thing, and I think it's a worthy subject. All right, well, we got about 10 minutes left. There's one thing that I wanted to bring up, and, this one it might kind of sound like a snoozer, but I think it's a perfect example of how government screws everything up. Ken, did you notice that it's going to cost you more to mail a letter now?
I did.
Yep, 82 cents, according to CBS News.
Yeah.
82 cents to mail.
Thinking back when I was a kid, it was
like a dime.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Well, when you were a kid, it was probably a penny, but now we don't even have pennies anymore.
Pennies were worth something then.
All right, from CBS News, UPS, or the U.S. Postal Service, rather, to raise the price of a forever stamp to 82 cents on Sunday. I didn't think the post office was open on Sundays. Anyway, and I quote, the U.S. Postal Service on Sunday will raise the price of a first-class forever stamp from 78 cents to 82 cents. The latest in a series of increases aimed at stemming the agency's mounting financial losses. The USPS announced the increase in April. Let's see. And the agency has raised the price of a first-class stamp 6 times, including increasing the cost 34% from 58 cents in 2021 and to 78 cents before the hike set to kick in on July 12th. Well, one of the reasons why the U.S. Postal Service can't make any money is because they're run by government, and they have a government union that's forcing them to pay employees, the stereotypic postal worker, outrageous rates. And, maybe there was a time when the Postal Service worked, but I think it's a perfect example of where government doesn't operate like the free market. And if they were forced to, i.e., unions didn't get to dictate wages, and we didn't have public sector unions controlling everything, it could be profitable. But it's run by government, and so it's never going to be.
Well, you could kind of draw a little bit of a contrast between FedEx and UPS.
Yeah.
The type of service that you get and the cost for the same. And I can only imagine how bad the post office would be if they didn't have the competition from those private entities.
Oh, man. Well, just yesterday, I ordered a new camera.
What kind of camera, Steve?
Yeah. Well, Steve, you see, I'm not going to tell you what kind of camera it is. But it's I've got a couple of events coming up, and I needed a third camera. But when I paid for the shipping, it said 2-day guaranteed. And granted, you pay for shipping, but man, if you want it fast, you're willing to pay for it. And I guarantee that camera will probably show up tomorrow morning because it's being shipped by FedEx, a private company. Now, if it was just the U.S. Postal Service, maybe I would get it in 2 weeks, or maybe not at all. I'm being a little facetious here. But a lot of these government agencies, like the Postal Service, they need to be run like a private enterprise. That is, hey, you don't get to dictate your wages, and you actually have to perform, and we're going to turn a profit, and we're going to cut any waste. And so one of our listeners says 9 cents to mail a letter when they were a kid. But again, the dog years thing. That's funny stuff, Linda. All right. Well, my friends, that'll do it for today's installment of the broadcast. Tomorrow we'll be back in the home studio. It's parade day down here in Sheridan, and we won't be able to get within a mile. Well, probably more than a mile. Within 500 yards. So have a good afternoon, my friends. We'll see you tomorrow morning. I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy.